Boston, 1773. Cold air scraping skin. Benjamin Ede moves fast toward the Green Dragon Tavern. Coat pulled tight. His breath joins steam off battered mugs. Smells like burnt beans and city dust. Lamp flames catch on stained shirts, crooked hats. Merchants, sailors, all half warmed and twitchy from the harbor. Eads finds a seat, drops his satchel, tugs out a sheaf of parchment. Word to pass may be trouble too. This isn't enemy territory. These are his people. They know each other. Trust runs thick, especially tonight. Voices low, revolutionary talk grows, pushed along by bitter coffee and the press of bodies near the fire. It starts here for real. Coffee didn't arrive in the American colonies by accident. Late 1600s, traders hauled beans from London and Amsterdam, chasing profit and novelty. Early 1700s, coffee houses cut into the landscape, stretching from New York down to Charleston. They didn't just serve caffeine. People gathered there for argument, gossip, newsprint, and ink-stained fingers. The drink's rise matched a boom in newspapers and letters. Coffee fueled more than alertness. It stoked talk and ideas. Tea at home stayed private. Just you, your mug, your four walls. Coffee houses blew that apart. Tables jammed full. Voices bouncing. 1 penny on the counter bought you a seat. Didn't matter if you stitched boots or wrote contracts. Artisan, merchant, apprentice, lawyer, all ducked in under the same roof. Nobody cared who your father was. A stranger sat down, turned into an ally, or maybe a loud rival. Ideas spilled everywhere. Walk in with one belief, walk out with 6 arguments. Colonial society didn't have many rooms where a tailor and a judge argued face to face, but coffee houses gave them that space. Boston's Green Dragon Tavern was no ordinary watering hole. It doubled as the Shadow HQ for the Sons of Liberty. Samuel Adams hunched over rough tables with Paul Revere and Benjamin Ede, thumping out strategies, cursing new taxes, and drafting rebellious pamphlets. They didn't just complain, they plotted. The Boston Tea Party took shape in those back rooms, the old beams soaking up their low schemes and tight voices. That's where talk crossed the line into action. People called colonial coffee houses penny universities. You'd hand over your coin, sit down, and soak up more news than you bargained for. Newspapers were read aloud. Mail from London or the islands got unpacked around chipped cups. Nobody minded a loud argument. Politics, lock, gossip, plots, it all floated through the brew. Word spread fast, and so did revolution. These places pumped the real lifeblood through the colonies. Print took root in the colonial coffee house. Eds and John Gill pushed out pamphlets and newspapers straight off the press. Customers tore into the latest broadsides here, news hashed out, rumors confirmed or killed. Citizens getting sharp, one steaming mug at a time. Colonial coffee houses, mostly filled with men. But behind every crowded room, women pushed things forward. Widows and sharp women often ran these shops, owned the place, handled the money, served every cup. They built spots where people talked and trusted each other. Some women never stood out front, but their letters and connections edged into every heated argument inside. You'd miss half the story if you only watched the men talk. Coffee houses weren't just for gossip or caffeine, they cooked up the revolution. Before the shooting started, colonists crowded into these cramped rooms and got their hands dirty. They planned boycotts right over the clink of mugs, petitions against that damn Stamp Act, written between sips. The talk wasn't just hot air. Protests that looked wild outside started slow over ledgers and tankards, the minutes shoved somewhere safe, just in case a redcoat barged in. Nobody was sleepwalking into history. These folks ran the numbers and made the calls before it blew up on the street. The London Coffee House sat right where business, politics, and gossip collided in Philadelphia. Merchants swapped goods and rumors, lawyers bent close over their cases, Abolitionists picked slavery apart, sometimes all in the same afternoon. In 1765, the Stamp Act set this place on fire. Crowds pressed in to argue, and the talk spilled out onto the streets. Coffee houses in the colonies didn't run on official memos. They thrived on rumor and gossip. News drifted in from ships or horse riders, dropped on tables by people hungry for something fresh, even if it wasn't quite true. These places pumped up stories, broke them down, twisted them, sometimes set an entire town buzzing with half-fact or wild invention. The coffee house doubled up, part news desk, part rumor factory. Truth and lies jostled there, each one steering what folks believed. Skip the apps, go back to the colonies. They had coffee houses, not Twitter. That was the network, live and messy. People huddled over bitter cups, slicing up turf and building alliances. Some feuds started there, some partnerships too. If you ran trade out of Boston and bumped into a shopkeeper from Charleston by accident, usually you met him here. Artisans showed their latest work, hoping to catch a rich eye. Writers tried out ideas before a crowd, looking for anyone bold enough to answer back. The whole nerve center of the colonial world ran on caffeine and talk. British officials knew the talk in coffee houses wasn't harmless. Loyalist informants mingled, catching fragments of rebel plans. Meetings shifted into back rooms or started using codes, but the coffee house still pulled people in. Too risky, too tempting. Plans for the Boston Tea Party didn't spawn in daylight. They took root in Boston's coffee houses, quiet corners, low voices, hands wrapped around mugs that hid more than they revealed. December 16th, 1773 hung close. In the days right before, the core group hashed out the plot, pushed the British tea into the harbor, and slapped Parliament in the face. Sworn secrets passed under the nose of British law, steeped in steam and the hush of backroom promise. Then the night passed. Dawn cracked. Coffee houses lit up, rumor jumping table to table. By noon, the whole city's nerves were hot with it. Colonists cracking the crown's grip right out in the open. Funny twist, when colonists dumped the tea, they ended up crowning coffee instead. Tea smelled like taxes, redcoats. Britain, nobody wanted it anymore. Coffee took its place, both in mugs and in the imagination. Even after the revolution wrapped in 1783, the coffee house stuck around. People met there, not just to gossip, but to argue, trade news, and throw ideas around. That basic layout, open talk, open room, never really left. Early American institutions ripped a page straight from the coffee house playbook. Loud debates, building consensus, civil fire, same stuff you found in those cramped, smoky rooms. Town halls copied it. Congress just dressed it up and kept the spark alive. You can still feel the coffee house pulse if you look. American democracy runs on argument and fresh ideas. That's the system's real fuel. Colonial coffee houses did more than pour coffee. They made trouble. Thick air, burnt beans, arguments. Regular colonists showed up and started turning the place upside down. Argued, planned, built something new. History shifted in those cramped rooms. When you tip back your next cup, remember, rebels used to sit where you're sitting, and a country started right there.